Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Market Down Podcast. My name is Nick Cummings, joined this week by James Gisante. And this past week has obviously been dominated by all of the AEW backstage drama, whether it be the tampering stuff that we talked about last week, and we will be getting more into again later on the episode this week. But we do start with the bigger news, which has been I guess at this week, few weeks of reporting involving all of the drama with CM Punk. Now, there's a lot that's involved with this, so I'll try to break it down as best that I can. CM Punk has been reportedly having issues with Hangman Adam Page, stemming back to one of their promos leading up to their title match. Apparently, Punk took offense to what Hangman said in the promo about Hangman, I believe it was about what Hangman said, having to protect AEW from Punk and stuff like that. Word is that Punk thinks Hangman went into business for himself and was trying to, I guess, take Punk down verbally or something. I'm not really sure, but we'll get in my opinions in a bit. Whatever it was, Punk did take exception to it. And this has led to a bit of drama backstage. Apparently, because Punk is upset at Hangman, there are people upset at Punk because Hangman is a very well-liked person. And then there are people who think Punk is in the right, and they're upset with everybody who's upset at Punk. Now, that is all according to Brian Alvarez. And there's also reportedly much of the locker room that's upset with CM Punk and his relationship with Colt Cabana and everything that happened with his contract. So reportedly what happened with that is Colt's contract came up and he was not going to be re-signed. And many people thought that was because with CM Punk there, obviously they have their pasts and don't like each other. With CM Punk there, Tony Khan wasn't going to re-sign Colt. Now, apparently the Bucks and a couple other people went to bat for Colt Cabana. And the rumor is now that he was indeed re-signed and will be going to the Ring of Honor brand once that gets up and running, just so that Colt is still under the banner of Tony Khan, but he's not necessarily in the same locker room as CM Punk, and as obviously evident by his absence on both AEW programming and BTE, where he was sorely missed, in my opinion. And yeah, there's a lot. Also, according to Wade Keller, Tony Khan sat down with CM Punk last week before Dynamite. Word is that discussion went very well, and Punk didn't seem agitated or anything going up to Dynamite. Although, as we saw last week, he called CM Punk out, or excuse me, CM Punk called Hangman out at the start of his promo, despite the fact, $2, James, despite the fact that there wasn't any plan for him to do so, even though Punk does technically have carte blanche to do whatever he wants during his promos. Now, James, I threw a lot at you there. And I threw a lot at the audience as well, but this has been going on for a while, and the reporting is starting to reach a bit of a head. So I figured we'd talk about all of it now and get into it. What are your opinions on what's going on? Do you think anybody's in the right here? And do you think any of this at all is a work?
From what we've gathered, there are some legitimate issues at hand. Punk and Hangman do seem to have an issue with each other legitimately. Anything past that, and it seems that Punk really did decide to give Hangman a receipt with his promo last week. Anything past that, we don't know. It'll be impossible for us to know for certain, unless we're a fly on the wall at the office. I don't think we'll really get to know. I think,
or we wait 20 years for the shoot interview,
and even then, who knows who's telling the truth?
Fair point.
All I know is somewhere Simon Gotch is burying Enzo Amore.
And you just fucked up everyone's YouTube algorithm. Way to go!
Welcome.
It's James's fault. It's James's fault.
You're welcome, guys.
Subscribe and make him dye his beard green.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I really want to believe Punk, who is known, for getting easily agitated, I think that's fair to say, is mature enough to not let this ruin what has been a fantastic venture for himself. And honestly, for AEW too. I want to believe that he's happy. A lot of people have come out and said that he is happy. You know, we've seen FTR joke about it. We've seen a lot of people joke about it. Punk himself has joked about it. And with that, you saw that Instagram post, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, just
yep.
Beautiful.
Dax was very upset. No one complimented his delts.
I want to believe that this was something that had a kernel of truth to it, that they were able to expertly weave into a storyline. Now, granted, the way Punk just lost this title, it adds so many more wrinkles to this story. It adds so many other dimensions, and time will tell. Knowing how we record these podcasts, tomorrow a bunch of stuff will come out and we'll find out later. But I don't know. I want to believe that this was a shoot that got turned into a work and we're all along for the ride. And real life drama got turned into an excellent story, a captivating story. The Colt Cabana stuff is disappointing. One, I know I'm one of these people who is secretly hoping when Punk came to AEW, it would start to mend the bridge between Punk and Colt.
Yeah, I was there too.
That doesn't seem to be the case. It seems, hostile as always. And if Punk is really the reason why Colt isn't on AEW television as much or at all anymore, or on BTE, or just involved with the company, that is truly, truly disappointing and petty. And it's something that I don't want to think of Punk like that. And I don't want to think Tony Khan would bend like that. But I'm glad that it seems people were able to come to Colt's aid. And truth be told, I think he'll be great in Ring of Honor. That's where he really blew up in a lot of ways. Ring of Honor was one of the companies that helped him blow up. So him giving back to Ring of Honor is going to be great. It'll be a great home for him. But it is sad given the circumstances. So again, I don't think any of us will truly know what's going on for a very long time. But all of this does just feel very muddy, very icky. And I hope it gets resolved soon if it hasn't been already.
Yeah, this is really, really weird for me, starting with the Hangman stuff, because I think we, or at least most of us, would agree that ever since Punk has come to AEW, there have been many a wrestler in their promos who have said Punk is there for his own, for himself. He's there for himself, to build his own brand and just, and he's not there for AEW. He's not there for the fans within his character, not in real life. Eddie Kingston did it, and MJF did it, even though MJF was being a heel. And so when Hangman does it, I don't understand why that becomes such a big problem. It's pretty clear that they've made this part of his character, or at least his perceived character by the other wrestlers, that he's there for selfish reasons, and they need to, vanquish him, for lack of a better phrase. So I don't understand. I don't know Punk's relationship with MJF or Eddie. The one with Eddie actually seems like there might actually be some tension there, but Eddie always feels like he has tension with pretty much everybody. So it's very, very plausible they just agreed to work with each other just because it was going to be good and everyone knew it was going to be good. The MJF stuff, it really kind of felt like they seemed chill with each other just because they went at each other's throats so hard that I don't think Punk would agree to let anybody else do that. But Hangman, in a fairly innocuous way relative to what those two guys were saying, said the same thing, and now all of a sudden Punk's got a problem. And I just don't understand why. And I think that's my, the biggest hang up I have with all of this is it's like, all right, Punk, you're being pretty petty about this. And we know that you can be. It's well documented that you can be a very petty person. But in this instance, with this guy who everyone seemingly likes, it's just such an odd situation for me to look at and be like, yeah, no, Punk's in the right here, because I don't see how he can be.
I agree. I agree. And it's why it's such captivating television, because art is definitely imitating life. You mentioned all of his opponents, calling out his character, but the truth is Punk himself has called out his own character on TV, saying, I look in the mirror and I wonder, am I the good guy or am I the bad guy? And it's great stuff. And there's a giant fog in front of us as to what comes next. But I think that's good. I think that's good. I don't want to know what's happening next. I want to be on the edge of my seat every Wednesday, every Saturday morning when I get the results to Rampage. And I want to believe that this is just very exciting stuff coming, and that we're all adults who can figure out how to work with one another and not take things personally and do what's, oh boy, best for business.
Also too, I think Tony Khan is smart enough and has people around him like Shivani and Jericho, where they remember the backstage at WCW. Oof. And how ugly all of that got, between all the petty little beefs and people not wanting to put each other over. And obviously you had some serious egos in that room, as opposed to AEW, which does have some pretty big egos, but it seems like a very good chunk of these people are willing to put them aside. But I don't think they would let it get out of control. Sure, I think you're going to have your petty spats within the locker room. I think any job is going to have that in general.
Yes.
But I don't think they let it get to the point where it's literally two guys and maybe three, depending on how you look at it with the Colts situation, splitting the locker room in half. I don't think they'd let it get to that point.
I don't think so either.
But I think they'd let us think it got to that
exactly.
point. I think they want the perception of the WCW chaos locker room, because it adds to the intrigue of what goes on in the ring, especially if you start putting some of these guys up against each other.
The issue is, though, it's a fine line, because when you start to have the perception of a sinking ship, or you have the perception of the inmates running the asylum, it's hard to get rid of that feel. It's hard to get rid of reality. Exactly. So I don't need it to be the new norm when it comes to AEW. I don't mind it. I don't mind it in doses, but I don't need it to be the regular.
Yeah, exactly. Because I do think something is going on here.
Yes.
But I think it's going to get squashed fairly quickly, or it might have already been squashed, and now the reports are just coming out about it. Because I think at least in my opinion, it's fairly obvious that this AEW locker room and this AEW management staff, they know how to work these reporters.
Absolutely.
We saw it with the MJF stuff, and we're still not entirely sure what was a work and what was a shoot there, though he still isn't back. So I guess we'll find out
eventually.
Yeah. And I think, like we said on our live earlier this week, or at least I did, it's possible they used the MJF stuff with the Punk stuff. If he comes back, Punk losing the title, we'll see. There's a lot of possibilities out there, and we'll find out. And I think they know how to use these reporters just enough to, work everybody. But and this was mentioned during the MJF stuff, they got to just make sure they don't work the locker room.
Exactly.
That's where you're starting to cross a line that people don't like, especially the talent. So the other side of this story is, before Dynamite this past Wednesday, there was a talent meeting run by Tony Khan. Now, before I get into the details of what actually took place in that meeting, James, do you think there is any possibility that this whole drama with CM Punk was discussed at this meeting?
I mean, it's very possible, but I wouldn't if I'm Tony Khan. I wouldn't if I'm management. this, unless you're addressing the fact that we are not here to work our own staff and our own employees, there's no reason to bring it up. This should be a private matter dealt with Punk. This should be a private matter dealt with Hangman, I suppose. And you don't need to air out dirty laundry in front of your coworkers and your subordinates.
But I wouldn't even necessarily mean like the actual dirty laundry, but because obviously, like I said at the top of this, there seems to be a divide coming in the locker room to some extent. Do you think they would try to address that in general, just being like, hey guys, like, you know, we're all on the same team here type of stuff?
I mean, it's very possible. I would make it a priority to try to make sure morale is high at all times. The people who were listed as speaking were Kenny Omega, the Bucks, Tony.
Yeah, Tony Schiavone and Jericho, along with Tony Khan himself, who ran the meeting.
So just looking at it, Kenny and the Bucks were EVPs, and you know, a lot of people are there because of them. Schiavone is a major figure now in talent relations. Jericho is the veteran of the company, and Khan is the captain of the ship. So there is no better unit to address morale and address unity than them. So it's very possible. I think it was leading. I think it had to deal with other issues that I know you'll bring up, but if it was mentioned, I don't think it was the focus.
I think that's fair. And just to be specific, it was Matt Jackson, I think just him, not necessarily Nick.
Gotcha.
Matt's obviously the better talker.
Even in real life.
But no slight to Nick. I love Nick. He's good, and we share a name. But yeah, I think there's a possibility that they just genuinely brought things up. You know, a bit of a, you know, not a players only meeting because obviously management was there, but you know, just a bit of a whole team meeting. I sit everyone down and be like, look, we know there's been a bit of shit going around. We got to get this done with, like, even hopefully, especially if everything's already been squashed, it could be, look, it's squashed, it's done. Like everyone, you know, everyone love everybody, and and let's just move on from it all. And you know, and like you said, we're working them, we're not working you.
Exactly.
So I think that's a possibility, but as of taping right now, we don't know all the details of what those four guys said. Those guys being Kenny, Matt Jackson, Schiavone, and Jericho. But what we do know is what Tony Khan was talking about. So Tony broke down some of the new systems and structures in place to make things better for the talent. This coming from PWI, the initial meeting being reported by Sean Ross Sapp. He also told them that AEW's chief legal counsel had emailed Nick Khan and Stephanie McMahon, warning them not to tamper with AEW talent. So, James, obviously after last week where we talk about the tampering by WWE with an AEW talent who did then report it to AEW management, I think it's interesting to see Tony do this. I think it's very good that Tony is trying to do better by his talent, setting up new structures. I think you mentioned Schiavone has a new role backstage where he has a more expanded talent role and will be doing a lot more things, which I think is good. I think a lot of people like him backstage. And then also too, he's protecting his guys and his girls, you know. He's not just from poaching, but from poaching, but you know, he's making sure that everyone's treated fairly and it's not just specific people just, you know, getting poached from AEW and then possibly screwing up somebody else's shit because they're in a feud or whatnot.
I think other than the fact that you're protecting your people and you're securing your relationship with your people, you're also making a statement. This is not acceptable. This is still a business. And this, it pains me to say it, this is an Impact. You know, we're not a waiting platform for you to get to WWE. You're either with us or you're not with us. So it's yet to be seen the ramifications of what will come from WWE reaching out to whoever they reached out to. We're starting to get an idea of who it is and who it isn't. I think we could eliminate Swerve now from that list of people.
He want to go.
Nope. But I hesitate to say who it could be just because I don't want to put people out. But it's a very big deal, and it's not like football, it's not like baseball, it's not like basketball or hockey. This isn't a league, this isn't a league that all have to report to the same governing body. Right. These are two very different companies, and granted, contracts are contracts, but what's WWE going to lose? A draft pick?
Yeah, they can get fined.
Exactly. Like it's a very interesting thing to happen, and it shows that WWE under the new regime recognizes where talent is worth grabbing from. Wait, what happened?
No, I was just thinking SmackDown's going to lose a draft pick because they tampered with Swerve.
God. God, so funny. But that's the thing. Like, under this new regime, we're not going after college athletes anymore. We're going after talent again. And talent is in AEW. So I could tell you firsthand some of the most exciting things of the Attitude Era were who's going to show up what week on what show from what company.
Yep.
And I think we're getting there again,
Who was it that showed up on all three shows in one day? Okay. I know Rick Rude did both. I think Rick Rude did both
Raw and Nitro.
Yeah, because I think Raw was taped that week and Nitro was live. Maybe he showed up in ECW later in the week. Maybe that was it. Like,
who knows?
Somebody did all three in like a week or something. It was crazy. God. If you know who it is, comments, because it's going to drive me nuts.
Please. I know that. I don't know. I don't know what I know. I don't know what I know. I just know that Cody was the first. He will not be the last. He won't be. And that was under the Vince era. Now we're in the Triple H era. I have to believe there is talent from AEW that he would be chomping at the bit to get back that he lost from WWE and NXT.
And also, again, vice versa. I think there's plenty of people who would like to go to AEW, just to, maybe get a fresh start or to face some other talent or just do something new.
Yeah. So no matter what, this was very important to be addressed on Tony's part, AEW's part, and I hope this sets a precedent of what isn't acceptable and what is to be expected in situations like this. And I really want to know who the talent was that was reached out to, and good on them for talking to their boss about it. Good on them for doing things the legit right way. So I don't know what comes from this, but it's going to be, like you said, we know AEW has already reached out to WWE legally about this. And even if nothing comes from it, a message was made. So,
and it sets precedent as well, legally.
Exactly. So I would not want to face against Mega. I follow that woman on Instagram. I know her story. I know what she's been through. I would not want to be on the opposite end of a table from Mega. So good on AEW for bringing out the big guns in their legal department.
For all accounts and purposes, for those of you who don't know her, she's basically the number 2 in the company. And she, as I mentioned earlier, is the chief legal officer. I just didn't want to butcher her name, and I apologize to her. But I do want to read this line from PWI from the actual story. Quote, Khan also made it clear that AEW was in an industry, quote, that has long been dominated by WWE, unquote, and that he had put everything into it to make things better for the talents. Sorry, a lot of eyes there. But I think that's A, smart to tell them, and B, I think part of making everything better for the talent is making his company as good of a place to work as possible, because then, it makes other companies step their game up as well. Now, obviously, as he said, this has been an industry dominated by one company for 20 years now, pretty much, right? Since WCW closed its doors, and I mean, TNA was there, but they never had the market cap that WWE did, and AEW is now the most viable contender we've had since then. And I don't even think they're calling them a viable contender. They are there. They are the contender. They're the competition. And if Tony Khan makes sure that his company is up to the highest standards, and WWE, now obviously being run more or less by Triple H, has to make sure that his company is going to be up to those standards as well. And as they say, the rising tide lifts all boats. So I think it's very good that Tony is pointing this out, not just to be like, hey, I'm going to be better than WWE and, you know, you guys got to stick around. But also to like being like, hey, this is for you guys. You know, it's not just for me. Obviously, he's making a lot of money and it's a lot. It's good for him, but it's also good for them too. And it's good for the industry and it's good for everybody. So I think this was a smart meeting. And I'm sure more is going to come out of what was said after this taping. And of course, it's not going to be in the show because this happens to us every week. It feels like everything comes out on Thursday and we record Wednesday nights. But as if it's big, we will cover it next week. So that's all we have for this week. You know, a bit of a short episode, but there wasn't anything too crazy. But we just definitely wanted to cover those things. So that being said, thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. As of this recording, we are at 98 subscribers. I feel like I said as of this recording a lot tonight, but we are at 98 subscribers, which means we're 2 away from James having to dye his beard green and rap. Danny is working very hard on this rap, and I really want to see this and hear it because I want to know the punchlines he's thrown in there. So be sure.
They're terrifying for me.
Be sure to do that. Check, and while you're doing that, check out some of our other videos. Danny covers Raw on Mondays. James will hopefully be doing Impact on Thursdays when he can. Chad is very on and off on NXT, but I think he's getting back into it. It seems to be getting a bit better because it was apparently not good for a few months there. But
we got to drag you into a second show, man.
The rising tide. We'll see. Maybe when the Mets are done, maybe I'll be able to get in on something. But yeah, be sure to also check us out on all of our social media stuff. It'll be in the description below. Chad handles the Twitter and sometimes like drunk tweet on there. James on Facebook, Danny's on Instagram with the memes and the TikTok too. I'll do my best to get that link in there when he actually sends it to me. And I think that's everything I have to say. So for James Gisante, my name is Nick Cummings. Thank you again so much for watching, and we will catch you here next week on the Mark It Down podcast. Have a good one, everyone.